Hey Aaron, this is a response to your video discarding the delusions of favoritism, and you started out with a very interesting challenge, which is to find the flaws in our favorite games. So let's begin with that. Okay, let's go. Fiasco. It's pretty easy after the setup in Fiasco to kind of look at your character and realize you're not that interested in playing this character. Maybe he's just a second fiddle character, maybe he's just not that engaged with the other characters at the table. Whatever the case might be, what are you going to do? Start over? Granted, the tilt might fix this, but not always. Misspent youth. My favorite game to run, but man, is it ever a challenge to get those character relationships on track while trying to find a good moment for the struggle or what the struggle to be about, whatever the case might be. It's rather demanding and not always very easy to pull off, especially for somebody who may not be that comfortable GMing a game that is completely not predetermined. Dread. You can kill a player character in the first 20 minutes of Dread. Now granted, you can keep them around, but for that character, all of the anxiety of the game, all of the fear, all the tension is gone. They're already out. They cannot meaningfully interact with the story anymore. Siren is boring to run. It's great as a player, and it's very, very easy to run. And there's a lot of other things I like about it, but you don't really have a lot of authority as a GM, and it's not terribly interesting. You are very reactive to what the players do, which I usually like, but it's just too easy. Shock was written to be more indecipherable, more complex in its wording than it needed to be. Joshua A.C. Newman, what were you thinking? And of course I have to mention Apocalypse World. Now, Apocalypse World has a flaw that there's almost invariably going to be some character classes that are completely uninteresting to you, even more so than in standard games, because these characters have a lot of flavor to them. A gunlugger is always somebody with a big gun. A chopper is always a leader of a gang. A hardholder is always a leader of a group of people. And a skinner is always somebody with some beauty to offer the world. And while there are different variations, there are different types of gangs a chopper could run, different types of vehicles and ways to play a driver or a hardholder, they are very much their roles in terms of their personality, which is only really implied, but still. And that makes it flawed. The other problem is I have no idea where my physical copy of this game is. And I realize that's not a flaw for anybody else, but it is for me. I've looked everywhere. So you've had a few replies on this already, but it hasn't really approached the topic of balance that much, except in comments. Your definition of it was each player being represented fairly by the game mechanics. Now, I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but I think I'm being very fair with your definition. But what I have to ask is, in what sense are they being represented? Are you talking about the likelihood to succeed? In which case, is a jack of all trades balanced against a specialist? The specialist might have several things that they're good at, or anything associated with a specific stat, whereas a jack of all trades would be good reasonably at a multitude of roles. And also what roles are being asked for in the game. If you're very, very good at one specific aspect of the game, but it only comes up maybe once or twice a session, are you well balanced with somebody who is called upon on a more regular basis? How would we even balance the spotlight? I think we've all seen the standard adventuring party before with a fighter, a mage, a thief, and a cleric. It might sound familiar. And we've seen the situation where perhaps a thief is going to scout ahead. They're going to take a look where the enemies are, they're going to disarm the traps, they're going to unlock the doors, and then they're going to move back to the party and give them all a more fair chance in the next battle to come. And while that's great for the whole party, it does mean that that thief has more spotlight time because they have that entire game, part of the game that was played out, and then they take part in the combat. It is questions like these that makes the term balance very, very difficult to apply to role-playing games. And even if you look at something like The Forge, where they've been kind of dissecting games for quite a few years, they have this to say of balance. Balance. This term is undefined. Used without clarification by the user, it typically diminishes the value of discussions about role-playing. Now I put a link down below to where there is a part of an essay that discusses why they have come to this conclusion, and it raises some excellent points. It's worth mentioning as well that the essay linked below comes from the GNS theory, which has now been abandoned and for quite some time. There was some problems discussed with it and they've moved on to the big model. However, as you've mentioned before, it's important to be able to see the flaws in our own favorite things. Now you did of course provide definition as I quoted earlier. However, it might have been a little bit broad. After all, games aren't just a social thing that we do. The social aspect of it is a part of the game, and that makes it very difficult to define goals. And I'll give examples. We cannot fairly compare things like role-playing games to games such as basketball, because sure, basketball is very simple. There is a sphere. My goal is to put that sphere into your cylinder while denying you the ability to do it to mine. That's simple. But what is your goal in a role-playing game? It's not necessarily the same. My goal might be to get the most gold in the group. Your goal might be to get the most experience and level up your character. Somebody else might have a goal to advance a story. The GM's kid brother's goal might be to make him so mad that his face turns red and steam comes out of his ears. We're all playing to different goals, and there's no way a system could possibly balance all of these things at once. You might say that the best way is to make a game balanced in regards to what the game is about. For example, basketball isn't about bouncing the ball off other people's heads, it's about getting that ball into somebody else's cylinder, and that's what the game is balanced in respect to. But a lot of games are built to be very broad, where you can write what the game is about for yourself, and therefore it makes it much more difficult to really balance how people are going to interpret that product. Ironically, a lot of the games that I play are very well balanced. Apocalypse World notwithstanding, it has classes and they are good at very different things. However, the majority of the games that I play are considered very balanced. They only tell one specific type of story. However, in that regard, everyone has equal agency in doing so. But that's simply because in most cases, they don't have stats. Fiasco, no stats. Cyrun, no stats, just questions. Misspent Youth, you have convictions, but there are no numbers associated with them. Shock, no stats. Dread, no stats. These are all examples of games that are perfectly balanced. However, that is just a side effect because there's no way to game them, to play them better than other people. The game itself sort of is its own reward. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that balance can have its own problems. After all, if you want to really balance a game, as I've heard it said before, you can have a character with 10 hit points who does 1 damage every round, and a character with 5 hit points who does 2 damage every round. And they are perfectly balanced. They're also completely uninteresting characters. Balance done too much can cause its own issues. After all, what would Harrison Bergeron say? Well, I think I know what he'd say. I'd also like to mention that while I don't actually dislike balance, I don't care. If other characters are more powerful than mine, as long as I'm able to get what I want out of the game, it doesn't matter. If I'm having fun, why does it matter if somebody else has a better advantage, more ability in the world than I do? I would like to thank you for bringing up balance as a topic. It's one that I considered doing an episode on myself, but I decided against it because balance is such a difficult term to apply to a variety of different games. Much like immersion, we all experience it different in different types of play, and it almost becomes completely useless in a more broad sense. But I do also very much like your challenge to find the flaws in our favorite games, and having the look on games that I tend to have, I find it actually very easy to see what I don't like in games, even if I very much enjoy the game itself. Thanks again.